Yes, I've been gone a little while, but I am back, and I bring birds, bullets, and bloody beatdowns. If you've got some rage you want to unleash, then buckle in for this one, folks, because this game earns the reviews that precede it. Bloody Hell is a 2D Metroidvania and bullet hell game made in Unity Engine by Pun Intended, a group of 3 Dutch game devs. At the time of creation, they were students. It was made in a 5-month block in their course where they had a choice to do whatever they wanted, which is a very quick turnaround, though they admitted they had a boost from already having made some tests and prototypes before that. They graduated roughly November 2024 and are making a follow-up game, Bloody Hell 2, which will be melee-focused and isometric instead of 2D. It starts with a rock intro, which is actually pretty quiet, but can be turned up in the settings. One thing I noticed about the audio sliders is that once you get to about a third from the bottom, the audio is basically off. The last third is essentially obsolete, since it only really appears from level with the text and then gets louder from there. A very minor thing though, and has no bearing on the actual game. It shows you all the controls, but these are done in-game anyway via short tutorial prompts once you get to the relevant parts, and regardless of input you get the appropriate prompt for controls at each point. I'm going to go through the story first, then the gameplay, the level design, then the visuals and audio. You start with a dialogue cutscene setting the scene. You are Azrael, depicted as a sort of tough-looking bird, which I think is a dove from the thumbnail but could be a pale chicken. You're an angel and meant to chat to God because he has a job for you. Azrael is known as the Angel of Death, by the way, which would make total sense in the context. The other residents of heaven are this swan-looking thing that talks to you, a bird with a mustache, some crane-looking thing, a big chicken, and some chameleons, I think, and God, who is a big eyeball in the sky and tells you he's got a tiny little job for you: killing Satan. Since one does not simply argue with God, you are forcibly ejected from heaven to start your task. It's a pretty simple task and motive, and works well enough to justify the violence, if the whole angels versus demons setup isn't enough on its own. Avoiding spoilers, there are some hints that there is more to the story, and you meet another chicken going about his life in hell casually who hints also that God might not be what they seem. Saying that though, you've no massive reason to trust this fellow since he does start firing lasers at you eventually, but that's one for later. The ending satisfies the build-up in my opinion, though I would say it was an opportunity to be able to add a choice-based ending to the game. There's no issue with it as it is, but if a similar theme is kept for the second game with some doubt towards your motive, it would be good to put it on the player to give a bit of free will to them. The only sacrifice if you did that in this game is that you would have one less boss fight. The character writing has bits of humour and some references built in. There are a few minor typos, but the team is Dutch, so I can forgive that. God is supposed to speak in Bible-y talk with thou shalts and doths and such, but his writing isn't fully in that style. Some words that could be Bibled aren't, and some are but not necessarily in the right way. I feel like it's too nerdy to critique Bible talk though, so I wouldn't majorly hit this point. The gameplay consists of exploring, platforming and fighting. For mouse and keyboard, basic controls is WASD and shooting with left mouse. I did one run of mouse and keyboard and another with controller. On keyboard I fully disabled aim assist, because really you don't need it. Your accuracy isn't fully there even when stationary. The shots sometimes go slightly above or below the marker, but generally you'll hit whatever you click on. On controller I tried varying levels of aim assist to begin with. When off, obviously the onus is on you to aim correctly. I had some doubts because with the quick directional changes, the game locks to a cardinal point and then moves where you want it. Like for example, if I put my stick northeast, the aim target will lock north first and then move right to where I'm aiming. I worried this would cause some lag, but I never noticed any issues. With full aim assist, you can aim nowhere near an enemy for a couple of shots and it will still aim at them before firing where you've actually aimed. It gives you enough time to correct your aim, essentially, and gives you an inch buffer roughly each side. I, however, also turned aim assist off completely when I played my controller run after that initial test, and it made very little difference. You have to pay attention obviously to where you're aiming and focus, but it's very doable. You also have to adapt your playstyle because of the range limitation. On keyboard you can put your crosshair as far out as you want. On controller it's locked, meaning for long range shots, instead of knowing that you'll hit, you have to mentally extrapolate your line of fire to properly aim where you want to go. This means for accuracy you're generally better playing closer range, but it's doable regardless, and I'd say both inputs are fine. You wouldn't want to have the controller crosshair as free move as it is with mouse because it would be a nightmare to control and you probably would need aim assist then. This game was inspired by a selection of games. I managed to figure the Doom, Souls and Hollow Knight inspirations, but it was also inspired by Archvale and Enter the Gungeon as well. I'm sure if you've played any of those, you'll spot the similarities in the gameplay. Exploration-wise, your key focal points are these big giant crosses on the floor. When you find one, you have to activate it with F, where you dribble your blood onto it, and then you can use it as a door to access heaven as a central chill-out area, or you can do a quick heal there. However, this will also respawn all of the demons in the area you're in. It won't respawn bosses. You have to find these crosses going through the levels, but the game gives you hints with little signs. You also have a map, but if you enter a new area it will be blurred out and scribbly until you activate or rest at a cross, then it will solidify. You could run miles without finding a cross and just have to hope you don't die, but they are pretty easy to spot. And they're well placed for bosses and for further exploration. You gain abilities bit by bit. You get a dash which allows you to pass through projectiles from enemies, which later becomes a double dash. This has a short cooldown, keeping you mobile and letting you move through the levels at pace. Your next skill is a laser, which has 3 tiers of power. It blips and flashes for each tier, and this can be used to smash rocks to open up pathways, or to kill enemies kind of like a sniper. The downside to it in combat is that you get slower the higher the tier. You can move about with it charged but only just, so if you're going to commit to the blast you need to know you're not going to take a hit in the time it takes to charge it up. Your last skill is a grapple. You can lock onto enemies to melee them, which may result in you taking damage if they shoot a projectile whilst you head towards them, or you can hook onto skull posts to travel over gaps and water. You link this also with the dash for extra distance. You have to be stationary to aim the grapple, so again you're vulnerable to attack when you set up. You have a gauge in the top left in the form of a skull and a bone counter. Bones are currency, gained by beating up demons and smashing pots and coffins. The skull is filled by damaging enemies and consuming their still beating hearts like very soggy apples. This rage meter is used to heal you by holding E and recovering a heart. You get 3 heals per full skull, and once again are vulnerable to attack when using it because you have to be stationary. If you manage to fill the rage meter, you also unlock your ultimate attack. This consists of you hitting Q and then zipping around slashing throats like a cracked up serial killer. It's a short-lived but powerful ability that you don't often get chance to use, unless you're very light on your toes and can avoid taking hits and needing to heal. But that makes it a great reward for good play. Do be aware though that it can't break through rock defences. Some bosses can pull up rock walls as a defence which you have to blast with the laser. The ult cannot supersede these. This will save you doing what I did in the boss fight and trying to ult to finish off the boss and ending up smashing my face into a wall and then dying. If you take damage, the game gives you a pretty generous recovery period where things go muffled and you become invulnerable. You also get a good amount of immunity time off the dash as well, which saved my ass many times when I was running around like a headless angel chicken during bosses. Demons can be anywhere in the level, and you may get 1 or 2 on their own, or you may enter an arena and get trapped in the area until you defeat all of the enemies. This is where the bullet hell aspect comes in. Enemies shoot variable projectiles and lasers at a basic level, and you have to dodge your way through whilst firing back. Your basic enemies are these pig-looking things and some eyeballs. You will know exactly when you get stuck in one of these arenas because fire will appear to block the exits, summon signs will appear, and a Doom-like rock track will start playing. The enemies progress as the game goes on and you move into new areas, bringing into effect area of effect attacks such as shedding poison when hit or when dying, which, if stood in too long, causes you to take damage, and exploding enemies. Projectiles will follow regular and irregular patterns, with mixed speeds, variable distances from source, and some will home, meaning if they go past you, they'll turn back on you, and some will bounce off walls. In some places this is no issue at all. You can block them with walls or rocks, figure out the holes in their pattern, weave through and bash them up. The real challenge comes in the combat arenas because you have to navigate all of this variation in layers. It takes a lot of attention to keep your eye on dodging and keep your aim straight at the same time, never mind having to track if the exploding enemies are near you, if they have shields, where the edge of the map is, and preempt where to dodge when the telegraphing line of a laser appears ready to cut at you. The area of effect forces you to keep moving, and you're challenged mentally and with your reactions by the onslaught. It's a lot of fun, and the more abilities you get, the more agile you become, which means they can increase the difficulty as a result. When you get new abilities, you usually have to fight an enemy that the ability would have massively helped with right before you get it. You could argue that this has lost value since you could get the ability and then test it out on the enemy, but I think it's a decent way to do it because it makes you appreciate the new capability more, and they use the platforming rather than the combat as a way to practice the new powers. For example, you get your first enemies with shields right before you get the laser power that allows you to break through those shields. But you've also had your path blocked by large rocks, and the laser is used to get rid of the rocks, opening new paths and progression. This lets you practice in a calmer environment. The dash is super helpful in both combat and platforming. The only issue I would raise with it is that when you do use it for platforming, it seems that the game tries to auto-detect the range of the dash and doesn't always get it right. Even when you first get it, the gaps you have to dash over are slightly different sizes, and it will automatically extend or not depending on that space. For example, you can double dash around corners. You have to hold direction, then press shift to dash. You get a pace in the middle to reconfigure, but sometimes it will detect the new platform and let you get there, and sometimes it won't see what you're trying to do and won't extend the first jump far enough to let you do the second dash around the corner. It's easier on controller because you're using stick rather than reconfiguring your hands to directional keys, but the detection is auto and happens regardless of input. This happens too on the grapple. You can grapple then dash or double dash to cover long distances, but if the platform you want to land on is specifically spaced from the grapple post, there is an equal chance that it will throw you over the platform and into a pool of sludge, than it will not detect the next platform and drop you gently into a pool of sludge instead. The good news is that the consequence of falling into whatever flavour of slime, pit, lava, or tears of the dams that you fall into are slim to none. You don't lose bones, mana, or health. You just respawn at the previous platform. It's so inconsequential that on some occasions it's actually better to throw yourself into the drink than to take damage in combat. This would be a criticism for me that there's minimal impact to the consequences of bad platforming, therefore minimising that element, but I have a feeling I'd have died an unreasonable amount of times because of the detection issues if the game penalised me for falling. So in this sense it's a nullified issue, but still deserves a bit of criticism because the game made a bigger problem that's negated by a smaller problem. Outside of regular combat, there are 5 boss fights in this game. Each boss brings in the new skills that you've learned, but are manageable without them in the event that you've gotten too keen and go fight them before you're fully prepared. For example, the laser shooting chicken boss involves getting to him whilst not getting hit by his laser, but there are variable routes used to get there. One you can do with the grapple if you have it, and one you can do without it. As this is a Metroidvania, you do better at bosses the more you explore before you face them, so I did my utmost to scrape every bit of map I could access before I went to fight them. Some abilities are behind the bosses and you can't progress until you beat them, but some you find through other routes and getting through arenas. But it's not just abilities, it's power-ups too. There are skills gained through blood vials. These are found around levels in secret areas, past bosses and arenas, or bought through the shop chameleons in heaven and in levels. You can also find cursed hearts, which you buy medicine for to unlock as extra lives. Bones are your currency and you lose half of them when you die, so it's a good incentive to preserve your life. You also need to look for extra spaces to lay your vials in your inventory to let them activate. The way the vials work is like a spatial puzzle. More powerful equals more spaces taken by the shape of the vial. You use the unlocks to open up spaces. A vial's power will only activate if it's laid completely in unlocked spaces. Just like the charms in Hollow Knight, you have a set number of slots and you can choose to have more smaller perks or less larger perks. You can unlock and buy vials anywhere, but can only activate them and reorder them at alchemy tables. This is an interesting way to apply the mechanic. It's nice to have perks to change up the combat, especially with variable input. On mouse I could play a damage-focused sniper kind of approach. With controller, since my aim was already a bit looser because of the input, I chose the Gatling gun approach with a deduction in range and damage but an increase in output. The game does allow you to rearrange the tiles you've laid via buying something from a shop, if you find it, so there is a way to get out of it if you've got new perks and want to activate them, but your original setup doesn't work. Some perks, however, aren't actually perks depending on the arena, and you have to go in and suss out what you're working with. The final boss is an easy example. I strongly considered using the wall bouncing skill to turn the arena into a projectile mess, but there are no walls in the arena, so it would have been a wasted power-up. Similarly, I had to change between attempts. I had an active power-up that caused dead enemies to let out a wave of bullets. This is great for general combat, and I expected ads in the final boss, but there were no ads, meaning the only thing that would release bullets when it died was the boss itself, so it was a waste of tiles. All of this feeds into the level design. As you go along, there are variable paths. You can see power-ups to collect and new routes, but you can't always see how to get there. And you can't always get there even if you want to because you need a new power. They're designed to make you go back and forth to previous areas to explore bits you couldn't before. I will say I was hesitant at points, particularly in one area where there are holes of different colours that take you to different areas, and that you can jump down and definitely can't get back from. Since the map is unknown, I was wary of missing things before the end of the game, but you do have to trust in the format that you will be able to get back eventually through another route. The game does warn you once you reach a point of no return. This isn't just true for Hell, it's also true for Heaven. With your double dash, you can reach a couple of new areas in Heaven to unlock a bit more story and a power-up. And in levels you can find blood vials, find the large chicken's chicks as collectibles, all in hidden and secret areas. They give you hints that you might not notice at first that these secrets exist, and it's a great way to make you scour the map for all the details. You get achievements for finding all the blood vials and chickens as motivation, if a wider choice of combat ability isn't motivation enough. You can use the crosses to fast travel between different areas and make the process faster. The only critique I have of that is that you have to go to Heaven and then run and jump back down this hole to access the fast travel menu. You can't just activate fast travel at the crosses themselves. Another option to do that would be quite helpful to save a bit of time. The level design also supports the combat. The arenas are sometimes widespread, allowing you a lot of space. Sometimes they've got blocks and water in them to close down the area and limit your manoeuvrability. Enemies detect you by proximity, so they won't all attack you at once, even if they're in the same arena, but the more you move around and draw them to you, the more you have to deal with. If you stay localised and kill the enemies, you can win space to heal in, but you can't always stay still, not just because you don't have enough space to dodge, but because of the exploding and caustic enemies. They use the combination of space and enemy variety to change arenas, some more chill and longer range, some more tight-knit with a lot of movement. One unmentioned feature that I really like is a perfect dodge. If you dash into a bullet just before it hits you, you get slow time and your next shot turns into a laser beam. I found this by accident and it confused me a couple of times, but later on figured roughly how to trigger it. The bit I didn't figure out was that you can only do it dodging a bullet aimed directly at you. This makes sense, because with spread attacks it only ever seemed to be the central bullet in the spread that I could trigger it with. It's a really neat feature and very satisfying reward for good play. The devs had to explain it to me when I asked. Overall, the gameplay and level design work really well for both the exploration and combat, and there's good variety in the areas too, with colours and features changing to differentiate, and enemy difficulty and variety progressing to up the challenge. Your own loadout changes your experience as well. Visually, the game is very well done. It's pixel art, and the basic pig enemy is used throughout with variations later on, with some caustic touches and some slightly more buff than others. They recycle the first boss later in the game as a preamble to the final boss. You could recognise those melons anywhere. The eyeball enemy turns into a double eyeball and an eyeball on a pole that lasers you, Then you get frogs and goblins with variable attack patterns, exploding mushroom bug things, and demon dolphins. There's a lot visually to take in during combat, but there's good distinction between enemy and projectile for the most part. In the last area, the Abyss, it's greyed out and they decide to change the enemy colouring to bluish white. This works to a point, but the projectiles are white here too, and the enemies get the ability to teleport, which is a white flash on the screen. If you have more than one enemy, they can both teleport irregularly, so you don't know which is teleporting where. But if you have lingering projectiles, white enemies and white flashes, it can be hard to distinguish what to shoot at and what to dodge in that last area. I don't know why they changed it. Maybe they wanted to wash it out to give that bleak look for the darkness, but a greyed version of the colour scheme with white projectiles would probably work better than all being white. They add some nice details too. The more damaged an enemy, the more bloodier it gets physically, as does your character when you take damage, and the animation to go to heaven is you literally being ripped apart with chains, killed to send your soul up. You pray to heal, and all the lasers and such come out of your halo. Shading is done nicely to give glow and contrast and to define 3D features in a 2D landscape. The effects are also very well done. There's a lot of blood spatter and you get shine off of this, as well as a ripple effect and splashing sound effects when you run through it, and spilled poison to back it up. You get good feedback from shots and hits, including when you hit and kill enemies off screen, and the screen shake adds impact. There's good visual and audio hints to preempt attacks as well. The deep voice to signify the full charge breaks through the noise of combat whilst keeping with the theme, and gives a very Doom, Mortal Kombat, finish him kind of vibe. The rock music for combat is really good, but my major criticism with it is that it very often stops and transits back into the ambient level music before the combat is finished. With arenas, you only get trapped in the first time it happens. Any other time, on a respawn, the enemies will appear, but you can just run through if you want. I believe this music switch often happens on second triggers or more. If there's a second wave in the arena, sometimes it kicks back in, but it's like the music gets bored of you fighting and goes back to normal, which can break the immersion a little bit. Obviously, you don't get any time to mope in the combat, you just carry on, but I'm not sure if it's mistakenly detecting the combat encounter as being over before it actually is. I didn't notice this problem in the boss fights. The Steam page says this is a short but sweet game, but it's got ample content for the adventurous. On my controller run, I'd already beaten everything but the last two bosses, so I knew where to go and what to do in boss fights. Even then, it took me 3.5 hours to complete fully, with bosses 1 to 3 beaten first time, several attempts at boss 4, and 1 attempt at boss 5. On my mouse and keyboard run, it took me almost 6 hours with a lot of caution, backtracking, beating bosses 1 to 3 first time. If you fully commit to exploration, there's hours of content to be had, and if smashing demons is your thing, then there's plenty here for you. All in all, it's a great way to spend a few hours and very satisfying. The team has a Discord server and X, formerly known as Twitter page, which I'll link below, where you can follow updates and make suggestions about the sequel, or ask questions and chat about bloody hell. Thank you to the devs for kindly answering my plethora of questions, and if you're interested, please check out, wishlist and support the devs for Bloody Hell 2. They're going to be looking for playtesters for the second game in the near future, and it has some interesting planned mechanics for combat, plus the isometric view can add more detail to the environments and exploration, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please check their socials and give them your feedback when the time comes. But that's enough out of me. I will give the original Bloody Hell a 9 out of 10.